post-Christmas edition of Three True Values. Hope everyone had a fantastic Christmas holiday. No matter how you celebrate, hope it was a great day for you. Now, as we turn our attention back to college basketball, we are here to give you a breakdown before we flip the calendar from 2023 to 2024. So we are going to talk about the top conferences, touch a little bit on the dynamic that's been going down there, who's the leader in the clubhouse right now for the regular season title as we enter conference play, and then also give you the most impressive team to this point, the team that has exceeded expectations the most. That's what we're going to classify with that one. And then the one that's been a little bit depressing, the team that has kind of fallen below what we thought they would be. We'll go through those. There'll be plenty of debate to be had as we go from conference to conference. I want to thank everyone who has tuned in, not just this year, but over the course of my podcasting career. First of all, before we get into things today, just appreciate every listen, every interaction, all you guys, what you've done to help my career, to help me get better at this as I continue to grow in this profession. So just thank you, and I hope that you guys stick with me as we go into 2024 and beyond. We've got a lot of exciting things planned for next year, not only here on the podcast, but with me, my writing, things that I have lined up. You'll see some of those as we flip the calendar, and I think you guys are going to like what you see, especially if you tune into this show. I know these are going to be columns, weekly, different things that I'm going to be doing that you're going to want to check out. So check out On Three, where all of my work goes. As we get into the show today, we're going to start in the ACC. We're going to go alphabetically by conference here. It's just going to be easier to do that way. In the first segment, we'll hit probably three of these conferences, and then in the second segment, we'll hit the other three and wrap it up with the games of the week, as always. But the ACC, as we get things rolling here, who is the leader in the clubhouse for the ACC right now? I think Duke, probably the preseason favorite. North Carolina, we said there were question marks. What are they going to be? They've looked pretty good so far. Borderline top 10 team, I think, so far this season. That's what the AP poll says. That's what some of the algorithms say. So North Carolina, overachieving. I think they're the highest ranked ACC team in terms of all the polls right now. Clemson, though, has kind of asserted themselves in that conversation, in that mix with what they've produced from PJ Hall. So can Clemson become the front runner? I wouldn't go that far yet. I think that they're right on the edge, though. I think right now, and this might be a cop-out answer, but I think it's a three-way tie. At the top, I think that it is Duke, North Carolina, and Miami at the top of the ACC. Have not seen enough separation there. I know Miami has kind of fallen off of the national radar. They haven't gotten as much love. They're still 9-2 to this point and have a chance to go into ACC play under Jim Larinaga, where they have had a tremendous amount of success over the past couple of years. So I'm not going to rule them out yet. I think they were a preseason team, my kind of darling in the ACC. I'm sticking with that. I think that this Duke team continues to get better. We saw a big win over Baylor this past week. I think things are starting to kind of come together with that team. They're getting their chemistry. I think they'll be much improved in the new year. And North Carolina, they're going to keep rolling. They're going to keep rolling. I think that they'll keep going. The question for me, what happens when they hit a skid? Because this team over the last couple of years has really struggled when they've hit those rough patches. Can they fix that issue this year? That remains to be determined. So those are the three teams that I'm watching at the top of this conference who can win outright. I think once you get into the tournament, obviously things get a little more dicey, especially in the ACC. A couple of years ago, I remember Virginia Tech making a deep run into the ACC tournament. Nobody saw that coming. We've seen the same thing from multiple teams throughout the past couple of years. So who else can contend? I think that Clemson fits right there in that next tier. They're just outside. I'm not quite ready to move them up into that four-way tie, but I think they're right there. If they can keep rolling what they got done in the the non-conference portion of the season, I think they can. I think they can work their way up into that conversation for the conference championship. Now let's turn our attention, though, to the bottom of the conference. Who's been disappointing so far? I think that there's been a couple of teams that have disappointed. I think that Florida State, we kind of were hoping there would be a bounce back. We hope that Leonard Hamilton, Hall of Fame coach, he's got in Matthew Cleveland, he's got some pieces back, Baba Miller. Can he bring it together? Can they get out of this struggle that they've had the last couple of years? Can they turn the ship back towards where it had been pointed so long under his coaching? They have not really been able to do that so far. They're about a 500 team in non-conference play, not an encouraging sign for when they hit this ACC stretch. Louisville, apparently Kenny Payne's going to keep his job, which means that the stock is obviously down on this team. That's the most depressing news that Louisville fans could have gotten over the holiday break, but I think we expected them to be garbage until Kenny Payne was gone. So him staying there does not change the expectations. If anything, it reinforces what we expected Louisville to be this year. So then I think the most disappointing team to this point has to be Notre Dame. Notre Dame under 500 so far, 5-7, have not looked very good. Micah Shrewsbury, he's a really good coach. He did great things at Penn State. I think he can build this Notre Dame team. But you got to remember, they lost a lot of production. I think we sort of discounted that too much when we saw how many players. I think that he brought in volume from the transfer portal to get this team ready to go out on the floor and play, not necessarily the quality he needed to get this team early in contention for an NCAA tournament spot. So that one's been a little bit disappointing for me to watch how Notre Dame has struggled. I know they've been near the bottom of the conference, but it's just disappointing to see that brand that low this season. That wraps up our ACC portion of this conversation, and we're going to kind of move on here now to the next conference, and that will be the Big 12, the most powerful conference in college basketball. There's no question anymore. After all the non-conference games, I don't even think we should debate it the rest of the season. It's not worth it. The Big 12 is better than everyone else. And at the top of the conference, you've got Houston, undefeated. Now, they did not play the most grueling strength of schedule over non-conference play, that's for sure. But I think that this team has everything it takes to compete at the top of this conference. So if you ask me who is the front runner in this conference, I'm going to ride with Houston. And I think that Kansas is probably in that tier. If we're going to put multiple teams in the tier, Kansas is the other team in that tier. I think that just below that, you've got another tier that includes Baylor. It could include Texas. We'll see about that. They've kind of been up and down so far in terms of their performances. And then you've got a class after that of BYU, Oklahoma, and I think you can even put Cincinnati has overachieved. Iowa State, we'll talk about them more throughout the season because Iowa State, the numbers love them. Go look at Kim Palm, go look at Sagarin, go look at all of those metrics that you can look at, the net rankings even. Iowa State is a darling in those rankings. So that's a team you're going to want to watch out for as the season continues because the analytics say there is more to be unlocked from TJ Otzelberger and that group. So those aren't even just NCAA tournament caliber teams that I'm saying. Those are like top 25 caliber teams that I'm talking about, and we've listed off probably half the conference here. So very impressive start from the Big 12, but who has disappointed so far? Who has been the most disappointing team? I'm going to go with two teams. I think West Virginia being under 500. I know everything that happened in the offseason with Huggins crushed morale, but they still had an amazing transfer portal class coming in. Jesse Edwards, Kirk Kriisa, Raekwon Battle, and I know he's had eligibility issues, but now on the court, you had that combined with Jose Perez, who was supposed to play for them. You had a lot of players who were coming in, and it looked like it was going to be Huggins' his big finale run. Obviously, he ends up not there. But this interim staff, either there's a problem with their ability to coach or everything just kind of fell apart when that happened. Because we're seeing some of these players who could be making massive impacts on important rosters just not do anything this season there at West Virginia. That's sad to see. It's sad to see a program like that, especially knowing the circumstances that brought them to this point. I think all around it's just a sad situation what we're watching from West Virginia this season. And hopefully they'll be able to right that ship heading into next year. I don't think this is one of those situations where you look at the interim coach and you say, yeah, for sure, he's our guy. No, I think they're going to do the extensive, drawn out national search to find the next head coach at West Virginia. The other team, though, that I'm going to bring into this conversation just briefly, I don't know if they've been as disappointing, but Kansas State last year was a team that we all loved what Jerome Tang was able to do. His first season as a head coach, it was great to watch them. They had great chemistry. The way that they played with each other, for each other, made that NCAA tournament run. It was so much fun to watch. Well, this is a different team, and it appears that the chemistry is a little bit different here. We've had a player who's no longer with the team, who was supposed to be a key piece of the starting five. That drama we've talked about some. He's now at Memphis. So he's playing for another team. He started his first game in action with the Tigers this past week. A lot going on there. But they just haven't lived up to expectations. It seems like there's a weird vibe around that place right now. We'll see how it happens. Jerome Tang, even with some weird comments during press conferences, he's clearly frustrated with how everything went down, the way that it was all handled. We'll see if they can kind of turn that shit back around and get things going, because I think they are an NCAA tournament caliber team for sure, but can they play like one given what has gone on around that program and some of the issues that they've had to this point in the season? That's what I'm watching with the Big 12 this year as we flip the calendar. And now, before we head into the break, let's talk a little bit about the Big East, because the Big East, they've been an interesting conference to watch, because Providence has actually been probably the best team so far in terms of the last couple weeks at least. I don't know if they're the best team overall, but they've been really good. I like this Providence team a lot. They make it into the top 25 this week. UConn's still the favorite, I think, to win this conference. Don't get me wrong. They return all that talent. They've dealt with some injuries. They've dealt with some different some fluctuation in the lineup. I think they're going to be fine. I think they're going to figure it out. I think they might even be better off for it, having to play different ways throughout the early portion of the regular season. That way they're ready come March, late February, March, to play different ways when they need to. So I think UConn going to be fine. I still make them the favorite in this league. I think UConn right up there at the top. Then I think there's a second tier where it's Marquette, Creighton, and now we talk about Providence in that group as well. Just outside of that, I think is Villanova, who you never know what you're going to get from. They might look like the best team in college basketball. They might lose to any given team from Philadelphia, even at the YMCA. You never know what you're going to get from this team, it appears right now. But they're on a win streak, so maybe they can carry that into Big East play. They are a sleeper to watch as this season continues going forward under Kyle Neptune. But consistency, that's going to be the key for them. Consistency is important. We'll also, obviously, in 2024, be watching Rick Pitino, what he can do in this conference as he tries to get St. John's back into the NCAA tournament. But in terms of the disappointing teams, you guys know, I told you this year, I said I'm not going to get trapped into this whole DePaul is going to be a good thing. And I didn't. I avoided that, thankfully. But this DePaul program is so far down now, as well as Georgetown. I think those two teams, they've got to be the most disappointing just because those are two brands. Particularly Georgetown is associated with NCAA tournament runs. And now they are just at the bottom. And so for these two teams to be struggling so heavily, the programs over years now, that's sad to see. Hopefully they're able to turn it around, whether it's in conference play, whether it's in the off season, next season, it's better for basketball if big brands have, maybe if you're a rival, you don't want them to succeed in the big picture, but to be good and have competition with the other great teams. That's what you want to produce the best college basketball we can have. When we come back on the other side, we will talk about the remaining conferences left. We got the Big Ten, we've got the SEC, and we have the Pac-12. So we'll talk about those three on the other side. This is Three True Values with your host, James Fletcher. Welcome back into Three True Values as we keep things rolling on the show today. We're talking about the most impressive and depressing teams in each of the major conferences as we flip the calendar from 2023 to 2024 and start conference play. We're on to the Big Ten now. The Big Ten has been a little bit of a mixed bag. I think that in terms of depth of the conference, this is one of the conferences you always look towards. You always think about from top to bottom how grueling the schedule is. But now you look, and this is a conference with 3 teams in the top 25. Of course, Purdue at number 1. But even they've dropped a game in the conference to Northwestern of all teams. But after that, there's Illinois. Illinois has been very good so far. And Wisconsin, who's kind of at the tail end of the top 25, one of those teams that could be in, could be out, depending on who you ask. This has not been some dominant conference to this point. The Big 12 has clearly taken over that category. I mean, almost the whole top 25 could just be Big 12 teams at this point. But still, if you're the Big 10, what you need, those numbers next to the names, they don't do anything for you on Selection Sunday on their own. But it's important to have enough of those numbers next to your name, because week after week, when we look at the schedule, I mean, just go to ESPN, CBS, any of these websites that will show you the scores of games. Click on today. Well, you can't click on today because there's no games today. Sorry, but click on Thursday. I think that's the first day that we have top 25 games back. It doesn't take you to every college basketball game. It takes you to the top 25 games. And if you don't see any Big Ten games in there, well, what does that? They're not at the forefront. You see 8 Big 12 games. You see 0 Big 10 on a given day. Well, now what are you thinking? You're thinking, man, the Big 12, that's where it's at. I need to watch the Big 12. Well, now you don't watch the Big 10. They might have a great matchup going on. There might be a Michigan-Ohio State showdown. Michigan State playing against an Indiana team. So what do? You need numbers next to at least a few of your teams, and they've got a couple right now. They're not in the danger zone yet. But if Wisconsin hits a skid, if Illinois hits a skid, I think they start to get into trouble with the depth of their conference, what it does for them. Because your depth can either boost you up and build your resume, because sure, they had 10 losses, but look at who those losses were to. Or they can say they had 10 losses and like none of them were top 25 teams. And I know we do the quadrant thing now, but still, it's in your mind. It's been ingrained in us for a long time that the top 25 is what you look at if you want quality. And so if all your losses came against non-top 25 teams, there's a perception that you lost to non-quality opponents, at least some of them. So there's that they will have to combat unless they can get more teams up into this top 25, which I think they're fully capable of. Indiana's 9-3, is on a little bit of a streak right now. They're starting to build momentum. We'll see if they can carry that over. But in terms of this team, this conference, I want to start with the most disappointing, because that's Michigan State, and it is not close. Michigan State has been incredibly disappointing. 7-5. They've won 3 in a row, so maybe they're swinging back into form. Maybe they're going to come back into this picture. but about as disappointing of a top 25 as, or excuse me, of a top 25 team in the preseason as you've seen so far. This Michigan State team has looked nothing like the Final Four team we thought they might be heading into this. I've also been disappointed with Michigan. The situation there, the reports about Juwan Howard, the fight back from people outside the organization about it. And then we start dealing with Phil Martelli. What is he doing? It just got so out of control. Now Juwan Howard back on the sideline. My hope for them in 2024 is that they can just figure this out. And when I say figure it out, usually I mean like on the court, the chemistry of the players, the system that you're running, figure out if Juwan Howard is the head coach, let him be the head coach and let him run the organization. Okay, because if he's on the sideline, look, I come at that, like, I understand he had heart surgery. That is nothing to play around with. But as someone with heart issues, if they were concerned enough about me that I shouldn't be coaching, they would not let me sit on the bench as an assistant. Especially after I receive a technical foul for arguing, because that's what they're concerned about, is me getting my heart rate up. So the whole thing was very strange. But now Juwan Howard back in his head coaching role. And now I just want to sit back the rest of this year, rest of the season, and as far as it comes with Michigan, just watch what he does. Watch how he handles it. All right, that's all we can do now. So that's where we are with Michigan. But in terms of the encouraging teams, I'll put Purdue in there. Purdue, I know we've had this conversation. They can do it in the regular season. Can they do it in the NCAA tournament? But you can't ask them to do any more than what they've done in the regular season. I mean, I guess you could ask them to beat Northwestern, but that, again, is a tough schedule in the Big Ten. I think this Purdue team is everything you want in the regular season. So congratulations to them. Also impressed by Illinois, what they've been able to do. I mean, this is a borderline top 10 team here. They just keep coming at you over and over and over again. Really good roster construction by that staff. I still think Purdue the heavy favorite to win the regular season title in this conference. And as we continue moving forward here, we will talk next about the Pac-12. We've got everything pulled up here now. And the most impressive team to me out of the Pac-12 has been, as might surprise people, Colorado. I knew Arizona was good. I didn't know they were this good. I still think Arizona is the favorite to win the conference. But this Colorado team, I didn't know what to make of it. A team that hasn't really had a lot of success, but they had some good pieces back, but those pieces haven't been part of winning teams. They bring in a extremely raw freshman in Cody Williams. Yes, he's got some pedigree in that his brother made the NBA, but his brother was not a top prospect. So very difficult to kind of try to gauge what was this team going to be. They bring in Eddie Lampkin, kind of a strange piece to fit in with this group. How would he fit? It's fit really well. I think this is an NCAA tournament team. I think that they've gotten everything they could have wanted out of the way that they built this roster. Tristan Da Silva has been great. KJ Simpson has been great. Cody Williams, one of the most efficient freshmen in the country. Eddie Lampkin came in. He played exactly the role you want him to play. I have no issues with how this roster is constructed. I think it was very well done by Tad Boyle, and I'm interested to see how they play in the conference schedule. Arizona, right there, like I said, they nailed it on the transfer additions. Really nice mixture of players. I think they've got what it takes. They've gone on a little skid here. I know some people are concerned about it. They played top competition, and they made some poor decisions. But they can fix poor decisions, right? They can walk through that. You show them the film. Now they've seen it. Now they know how they should have handled certain situations better. It's all about implementing it later on in the season. The most disappointing team is without question, not even close, UCLA. I know in the preseason I was like, well, this team is either going to be amazing or terrible. There's no in between because they went out and basically were relying on exclusively international talent to get them through the season. They didn't go get any five-star players. They didn't even go get many players at all on the recruiting trail. They didn't add any big flashy transfers. They were just going to kind of ride it out with Adeyemara and the rest of those guys. And that clearly was the wrong decision. They're on a 4-game losing streak as we keep rolling through the season. And they're under 500. There's just no signs of anything that's going to turn around with this team. I think it's going to be ugly for UCLA, and I've already seen some people talking about Mick Cronin, the Louisville job. I don't think that's really. I'm not going to put too much stock into that. Would he listen? Potentially, but probably more so to get the NIL investment that he wants than to actually leave, pick up his life. Because remember, he went from Cincinnati to Los Angeles. Everyone was shocked by that move. He seems to have found something really good there. It's just that this year, whatever happened, they didn't get the right players, whether it was him or the NIL situation or assistants. I don't know whose fault, where the blame goes, but they've got to get it fixed. Next year cannot go this way if you are UCLA. And as we wrap up the show today, this segment, I should say, we're talking about the SEC. And the SEC where we have got similar to the Big Ten, I think, in that it's a deep conference. There's a lot of teams that look like they're NCAA quality teams. They're not in the top 25 because they keep dropping opportunity after opportunity. Think about Alabama, Arkansas. You look at, they've dropped so many opportunities to be up in that conversation. Texas A&M dropped opportunity after opportunity. Missouri, they keep falling backwards. I mean, we're talking about this Ole Miss team that played. Memphis was the only real challenging game that they played, and they're in the top 25. So I think that for this conference, you've got Tennessee and Kentucky up top. I think that Kentucky's got the upside advantage with Aaron Bradshaw, what we've seen from him. I love his talent. I think that he can put a ceiling on this Kentucky team that is way higher than what we thought previously. And, that's regardless of whatever happens with other situations on their roster, injuries and NCAA decisions, whatever comes of that, Aaron Bradshaw raises the ceiling of this team. Tennessee, they are the high floor team in this conference. You got to catch Tennessee if you're going to win the conference. That's the one thing that we know. You're going to have to chase Tennessee and catch them because they are what they are, and they are pretty good at it. They've got a little bit of flexibility to get a little bit better, I think. Just here and there, little pieces, those offensive guys that they brought in, improving a little bit on defense, those defensive players that we know, getting into more chemistry on offense with the offensive players who came in. But we're talking little improvements here or there that you expect to see over the course of a season. So I think you got to chase down this Tennessee team. I've been impressed with what they've done. I've been impressed also with what we've seen from Auburn. I think this Auburn team was relying quite a bit on production translating from a lower level to this level. So far, it's paid off. They've been able to get everything they needed. They've relied on their stars to be stars, and they've let everyone else fill a role. It's worked really well for Bruce Pearl so far, and I think that this is a team that nobody's talking about. I think they're in that tier with Arkansas and Alabama as teams with enough to make a push. They've just got to capitalize on the opportunities. when they play against Kentucky, when they play against Tennessee, you got to pick one of those up, get that big momentum boost, and then ride that throughout the rest of the conference slate. The most disappointing team for me so far, it's got to be Missouri for me. I know that you could say Alabama. Like I said, they've dropped opportunity after opportunity. This Arkansas team has dropped opportunity after opportunity. And that Arkansas team, I think there's more worries with the Arkansas team than the Alabama team. The Alabama team played a tough non-conference schedule. The Arkansas team did not play as many high-quality opponents and still struggled some. But I think they've both got the pieces. We know that. And I think that both coaches now, with some time to coach over this past couple weeks and this next couple weeks, I think they can get things headed the right direction. Still have some faith in that. But Auburn is definitely in that class right there next to them as teams that can catch Tennessee and Kentucky if things start to roll their way over the next couple months. But Missouri has been disappointing. This is a team that I thought was borderline top 25. I thought Dennis Gates figured it out. He did so well last year. He brought in some new guys. I thought this is going to translate. Well, it just hasn't so far. They just aren't the team that I thought they would be. So it's been disappointing to see that. I know they're in that same conversation. They can improve. They've got upward growth left to be had. But will they be able to reach it? Will they be able to reach it in time? Because as we know, once you get into conference play, I mean, it's one game after another, and things start to slide, you get in trouble real quick. So Missouri needs to find a change. They need to be able to turn things around rather quickly if they are going to fix what they've had go wrong to this point in the season. When we come back on the other side, we'll get you out of here very quickly with the games of the week right here on 3 True Values. Once again, I want to thank you guys for listening to the show each and every week as we come on here on Tuesdays and talk all things college basketball. We'll get you out of here so you can continue celebrating heading into the new year with the games of the week. No games today, as there were none yesterday. Wednesday, we start off. We've got Virginia and Morgan State. Only 3 college basketball games being played at all on that day. So we'll go with Virginia, who's a borderline top 25 team right there. Oklahoma versus Central Arkansas is our game of the day on Thursday. Oklahoma team that we haven't watched a ton of, but they're in action coming up during this week. Then we go on to Friday. Friday, a much bigger slate, way more games being played. And we're going to watch Arizona against Cal because we're starting to get into the conference play spirit. We're starting to see those games happen. We'll watch Arizona and Cal face off ahead of the new year. Then on Saturday, we've got Marquette and Creighton. I don't think anything can top that. Marquette and Creighton, 2 of those teams that I said they're right there. They are really good Big East teams. Let's watch them. Let's see what they're able to do this weekend. Then on Sunday, we're going to go ahead, and we haven't watched a lot of them. We really haven't. We're going to watch Ole Miss play Bryant because Bryant upset FAU earlier this year. So maybe they're not the best team in college basketball. Nobody's going to argue that. But they pulled off an upset once. Can they do it again? They'll play Ole Miss, who looks to go undefeated in non-conference play. And then on Monday, we have New Year's Day. I know there'll be a lot going on, but we do have Texas playing UT Arlington on that day. So if you happen to have basketball turned on the TV, that's where you'll want to take it. Before we talk again next time, I've been James Fletcher. Thank you once again for all your support, listening to the show, everything you guys do. I hope you guys have a happy new year. Hope you had a Merry Christmas. Enjoyed all the holidays, however you celebrate. We'll be back in 2024 right here on 3 True Values.